Some of the challenges at first was figuring out what to eat, but that went away pretty quick. It was actually a lot easier than I thought, a lot easier. And now I don't even think twice about what I'm gonna eat. It's just automatic. It's just a different routine compared to being an omnivore eating omnivorous diet. Other challenges, I would say, it hasn't happened much. It's getting better, but there was some teasing, especially about it not being a manly thing to do. But when you think about eating meat, you know, what's so manly about paying someone to kill an innocent baby animal for you? So, yeah, other challenges kind of internally. You know, I see this injustice happening, just like other injustices happening, and in other parts of my life as well. But with veganism, and I see an animal, you know, a chicken or whatever at the grocery store. If that was a dog, people would be freaking out. But here you see a bunch of chickens, a bunch of dead cows, and I just see dead body parts. And I find it a little bit traumatizing. It's frustrating. I just wish people would see it that way, but I understand why people don't see it that way for the same reason. You know, I went 20 years of my life without being vegan, so you know, I was kind of blinded to what happened. I really didn't know, and just conditioned to think, oh yeah, it's perfectly normal to be killing these animals for no good reason other than for taste.
Well, I'm a retired fire captain paramedic, and I made this transformation when I was on the department, the fire department. And I got a lot of ribbing. But as it turns out, I happen to be one of the best athletes on the department. We used to have a traveling softball tournament team, and we would go to the national levels and compete with the biggest cities in the country. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, all of these huge fire departments that had thousands of people to choose from, and we had a little 100-man department, and we would always be at the top, in the top 10, and one year we were in the top 3. So when I made up my mind to change my diet, and my performance actually improved, it caught the eye of a lot of people in my department. There wasn't, for me personally, it wasn't that big of a challenge when I became vegan. I knew what the facts were, I knew the benefits of it, so the fact that somebody else may, you know, make fun of me or something like that didn't deter me from continuing down that path, because I knew how it was benefiting me. And frankly, the reason that I initially went vegan was for the environment. Then I realized the health benefits of it. And you know, now what really keeps me steadfast in this pursuit of educating the public is that the animals, you know, the suffering that goes on in factory farms, even on considered family farms. There's so much of that suffering. And all of these animals end up in slaughterhouses, and it's horrific what goes on in those places. From the workers that are there to the animals, how they're disassembled. It's just horrific, and I didn't want to have any part of it any longer.
The year that I went vegan, my entire family was like, yeah, your period is gonna stop, your teeth and hair is gonna fall out, like, you're gonna die, get ready, girl. And I mean, saying I'm still here is like the worst argument ever, so I'm not saying that. If you look at the American Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, that say that humans at any age from birth, including newly born babies with an adequate balanced diet, can eat plant-based and be healthy, I would just say, listen to the scientists, don't listen to me. I tried to tell that to my family. I tried to tell that to my friends. I lost some friends, which I'm not sure even if they were friends, if they really were trying to push me the other way, you know? Yeah, I guess that now is like a great quantifier of, are you really my friend? Are you really kind? Do you really care about what I want to do? Because if people care, they're going to respect what you want to do, right? They're going to respect my opinion if I want to, you know, dye my hair blue, as long as my actions don't harm anybody. As long as I want to do this for me, I want to eat plant-based for me. Now, if I want to do some questionable behavior, hopefully they'll tell me, right? That's how friendship works. But being vegan is not questionable behavior. You shouldn't worry for somebody, or you should go freaking educate yourself. So if people like that are in your way, then maybe consider educating them. And if they're resistant, yeah, are you really friends?
Of course, the main challenges with veganism really are other people. We want our family to be vegan, right? And that's very often the hardest, our closest friends and family. I remember in my case, for example, my mother, my sister, I really wanted them to go vegan, and years went by and I kept bringing them videos, showing them different scenes, talking about it. It never worked, and sometimes they'd get angry and say, oh, you know, this is ridiculous. But I just kept planting seeds, and after about 15 years, my sister wrote, and they're fundamentalist Christians, she wrote to me and she said, the Lord came to me and told me to go vegan. And I think, you know, the most important thing is to just be persistent, to meet any challenge as best we can with love and understanding. And it's been so wonderful now. My sister's been a vegan for, gosh, probably 20 years. And so to have the big picture and do the best we can, and ultimately we'll be victorious. I'm sure of that. The most important thing is to just meet everything we can. Whatever negativity comes toward us, try to turn that around and be loving and positive in response to that.
You know, when I chose this vegan path, I think the biggest challenges were socially with family. That was really tough. And you know, my biological family certainly didn't understand why I was doing this, and they thought I just wanted to be different, which wasn't true at all. I always kind of wanted to fit in, but I never figured out where the box was I was supposed to fit in, and it was challenging. You know, like my father would say, you know, he'd pound on the table in the restaurant if we went out to eat like a goddamn normal person. And I stopped going out to eat with my family, and you know, at different events. I didn't want to stand out too much, you know, weddings and whatnot. There was always a special thing that was served to me rather than it, you know, what everybody else was getting. And I didn't want to be the one who was high maintenance or different. So that was really challenging for me. And then I sort of changed my outlook on it, and just the way I felt about it, the way I projected out in the world about it. And I decided, oh, I get to be an invitation for a possibility. And rather than fighting things as they were, I decided to be really inviting about what could be. And it really changed things, you know. So instead of like, I'm not coming to Thanksgiving because you serve this animal. Instead of that, it was, come to my house for Thanksgiving. It will be fabulous. You don't have to cook, and just come enjoy yourself. So I just started to take a different turn in it, and inviting whenever possible, like creating an irresistible community of positive vegan choices. And it's great. Like now, I can't even believe I ever struggled with it at all, because now I have like an infinite number of chosen family and biological family who are vegan. They choose compassionate living. I can't even keep up with everyone, you know. So it really, I don't know, it's one of the most positive choices I ever made in my life.
One of the things that I think that people have to anticipate is that once you let people in your life know that you're changing your diet, everybody's going to become a nutrition expert. For instance, when I came home and told my father that I had decided I was going to stop eating meat, he tried to intimidate me out of my decision. He said, well, look, I'm not fixing anything different around here, so if you're going to eat differently, you're on your own. And looking back, I realized that, you know, my father knew nothing about being plant-based, and from his perspective, he probably thought I was doing something that was unwise and unhealthy, and so his response was to try and shock me out of it. I mean, fortunately, he didn't try to tell me, you can't do that. I guess he thought he would just sort of make it hard for me, and that eventually I would give up on what was, a foolish endeavor. I'm happy to say that didn't happen. Obviously stuck with my dietary choice. And again, I give God the credit for giving me the strength and the will to do that. But I think that, people will have to anticipate that the people that, some or even many of the people in their lives may not understand their dietary choices and will try to actively dissuade them from continuing with that choice.
I would say that my family was pretty great about it. Like they accommodated me as a 10-year-old wanting to be vegetarian pretty easily, and then they went mostly that way when I was a kid. They've always been very open-minded and sort of renegade, avant-garde type. So I was lucky. I had a supportive family. But I think every vegan out in the world, it's a different story. And I definitely have lost friends, a lot of them, sort of just from my close inner circle. We may still be friendly, but it's just weird to be putting so much into this and rescuing chickens and then sort of be invited to a party at their house and they're serving chicken. And just once you sort of get out of the mainstream diet and the mainstream world of harming animals, it's just very weird to be around that anymore. And I tend to get a little depressed, because I share what I do and I try to be really eloquent about it, but it doesn't always affect people. And then you just feel yourself sort of drifting away, but you find new friends and you find a chosen family that is really great. As with everything in life, it's not about the labels ultimately. And anyone can put a label on themselves, but they may not actually be that. And compassion is a label that people put on themselves very proudly, and the best thing we can each do is just look for the authenticity of what you're needing. So, if you're looking for a compassionate world, it's not always where the places have the big sign that says sanctuary or compassion. But keep going, because you will find your community, and sort of I did, and it was through a lot of, hard work and sort of a lot of disappointment, brokenheartedness, and sort of picking myself up and moving on to the next place. But eventually, I have a pretty solid and kind and beautiful and hardworking vegan community.
Like going vegan and making friends are, usually not two things you associate together. I mean, it's gotten vastly better over the 10 years of being vegan. Initially, the expectation is you're going to lose friends and family who either communicate with you or want to communicate with you. And it's twofold. One is you feel so passionately that you need to do something, and so you are sharing the message. And that can be off-putting because people like to live in their comfortable bubble where, they don't have to think about things or challenge themselves. And so you're essentially challenging everything. And a lot of times with friends and family, there's this feeling on their part that if you now think that those things are not okay and they're wrong to do, and that you're basically judging all of your time that you ever spent with them, and you're saying that there was something wrong with it, rather than realizing that people can change and adapt and have new ways of viewing things and grow, and that they could grow with you by embracing this new understanding. But a lot of times what it does is makes people decide that they just are done with you, or they want to fight with you and argue.
My first challenge in going vegan, because I had struggled with overweight all my life, was the idea that with all those carbs, I would never lose weight and I would be destined to obesity forever. Well, what happened in my case was the exact opposite. I was also in a recovery program for compulsive eaters, so I was getting the emotional stuff taken care of. But my food choices too contributed to being able to eat 3 rational meals a day. The weight fell off without even noticing, and I've kept it off for 37 years, which is probably some kind of record for the Guinness Book. But in addition to the good surprises that happened in that way, I gave birth to my daughter several months before I became vegan. And I looked down at her one day in the crib and knew that I just needed to raise her vegan. And that was also a big impetus for my finally taking it all the way. And one would think that raising a child in a Midwestern city in the 1980s, I would get a lot of flack from everywhere. But the truth is, I didn't. And I think part of that is that I just stood my ground. I never said to a pediatrician or the grandparents or the in-laws, well, I'm trying this thing and I'm not sure it's right, but I think it's a good idea. No, no, no. I just said, we're vegan. Here's the literature, so that they could know that the grandchild was going to be healthy. And that's it. I'm not asking your opinion, I'm not asking your advice, and I'm not asking your permission. I know this is right for myself, for my family, and it's just what I'm going to do. We actually had virtually no flack. At one point, somebody sent home from preschool a little note that said, you're missing one of the 4 food groups, and they checked off the dairy group. And I went in the next day with a full lecture plan, and I'm pretty sure that they never again told anybody that a child was missing something from the dairy group.
Okay, I have had challenges being vegan, but I've never questioned it from the day that I became vegan. The challenges mainly were with my family. They were supportive of my work in general, but none of them eat like I eat. And it made it difficult for me to have Thanksgivings with them and Christmas with them and other meals with them, because we would have to have 2 separate meals, and that made it more complicated for everybody. So I just said that I'll do my own thing a lot of the time, and a lot of the time they said that they would be willing to do that if it was at their house. If it was at my place, of course, there'd be a vegan option. But I've become accustomed to going into a restaurant and asking if they have a vegan option, and doing so with kindness, not with judging them that they're bad people. They're just doing what they learned, just as I did what I learned for the first 30 years of my life. Non-judgmentalism is part of this path, and veganism is a big part of the path. It's the physical part of the path, it's the spiritual part of the path.